I'm pinch hitting for Councillor Chapal this morning because she has a work conflict. She was unable to be here. Sends her apologies. So I will call to order this meeting of the Public Safety Advisory Committee of Thursday, October 24th, 2024. Could I have someone have a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Moved by Manpreet, second by Pat, all in favor? None opposed, motion's carried, and adoption of the agenda, of the minutes, I mean. By Gunor, second by Manpreet, all in favor? None opposed, motion's carried. All right, moving down to reports. We only have one item this morning, so.
Yeah, item 6.1 is the bylaw services statistics overview. It will hopefully provide the committee with some insight into the work of bylaw services and also a comparison of how that work has changed over this year from the previous years. Leading this presentation will be the Assistant Manager of Bylaw Services, Lisa Du.
Good morning, how are you? Thank you. My name is Navi Du, and I'm the Assistant Manager with Bylaw Services. Like Ken said, I'm going to try this clicker first. I'm going to provide you with an overview of bylaw services, including the demand data for 2023, 24, and then a 3-year comparison of our stats. To begin with, the legal context that provides the framework for us to enforce bylaws is the Community Charter and Local Government Act. So the Community Charter allows us to regulate, prohibit, and impose requirements on a number of specified areas. There are 5 areas where we have a joint responsibility with the province. That includes public health, natural environment, wildlife, building, and then protection of farmland. For bylaw services, our role is to lead, assist, and partner with other city public safety providers to ensure that bylaws are being complied with for an overall benefit of the community. In 2019, the city adopted a bylaw compliance policy. So in that policy, it outlines how we triage our calls based on 3 priority levels. That includes priority 1, which is public safety and liability. Priority 2 is where 3 or more adjacent property owners are affected with the concern. And then priority 3 is general, and those are the ones that we respond to as resources permit. Our continuum is to start off with public awareness and engage voluntary compliance with citizens before we move to the continuum of actual legal enforcement, which could include fines and orders. Generally, we find that most people are compliant in the voluntary compliance phase of this toolkit. We do have another service that we provide, which is mediation, and that service is provided for those issues where it's important enough for citizens to bring it to our concern. There may be a bylaw matter that might fall in priority 3. And in those instances, we try to mediate between the owners to come to a resolution rather than going with enforcement. For 2023, our calls for service, they come through 3 methods, which is voicemail, emails, and web requests. In 2023, we had over 12,000 inquiries processed through our desk. It is important to know that under the bylaw compliance strategy, council approved the strategy with a strategy that says it's a one-stop shop for customers for inquiries and complaints. So we did see our calls for service increase year over year. Based on that, the total number of non-compliance files we received was 7,040. The files that bylaw officers actually attended to was a little over 5,700. The difference in that number is the 7,000 includes duplicate records, which then are cross-referenced to the files that are dispatched. We processed 2,500 disputes. Held 8 adjudication hearings. So that's when a provincially appointed adjudicator comes in and does our adjudication hearings for our tickets. So that's outside of the court system. We adjudicated 257 tickets, processed 126 judgments on title. So judgments on title are those where property owners are non-compliant and then have not paid their ticket. We register it as a judgment against the title of a property, and then eventually it gets paid in that sense. We also had 745 compliance agreements that we processed. Those are where property property owners and offenders have the ability to enter into a compliance agreement if they have a ticket issued. The screening officer has the ability to reduce that fine to zero if they choose. There is a guideline. There is a council policy that sets out how tickets are to be processed, in what circumstances they're let go, and in which circumstances we can enter compliance agreements. For 2023, our top calls for service were street and traffic, business license, followed by zoning, good neighbor, and parks. We have right now a staff complement of 2 bylaw officer 1s. Those officers are primarily responsible for the street and traffic calls and the parks and encampment obstructions. Our 9 bylaw officer 2s are responsible for all of them, and then we have 1 crew leader. So as you can see, street and traffic made about 29% of our total calls, followed by business licensing. So street and traffic includes offenses such as parking violations, parking obstructions. Business licenses include renewals to business owners and then businesses operating without licenses. Zoning would include our property use. Those could be secondary suites, commercial trucks, soil deposits, and then good neighbor are our property maintenance properties. Parks include our encampment obstructions. The 2023 bylaw offense notices. So these are our tickets. We issued just a little over 7,000. The negotiated compliance agreements, as I mentioned before, 745. The paid fines to date, this can change daily depending on when people come in and pay. As of this report, which was October the 11th, the paid fines were just over 3,000. So most of our tickets, 62%, are street and traffic offenses. For 2024, we do have an increase for calls for service. So we're up to 19,000 to October the 11th. That is between a 15 to 20% increase, or sorry, we're trending to a 15 to 20% increase by the end of the year. The total number of NCs so far that we've received is 6,400. We've already attended to 5,192. For disputes, we've processed 2,148. We've held 7 adjudication hearings so far, adjudicated 246 disputes, processed 373 judgments. So we do have an increase in judgments here based on more tickets being issued this year for zoning, or more property owners not paying zoning tickets. We've entered into 1,350 compliance agreements. Again, for the call for service for 2024, it's very similar to the 2023, where the top calls remain very close to what was in 2023. We do have an increase in street and traffic. So we're at 32%. Business licenses so far is at 19% of the total file count. Good neighbor is about 14%, and then zone 10, followed by parks. Bylaw offense notices, again, street and traffic remains our highest file count or ticket count, which is 60% of our tickets, followed by zoning, which is 15%. Paid fines to date is 2,100. We've negotiated about a quarter of the tickets issued so far into compliance agreements. So what we've noticed is more owners are coming in to get compliance agreements, and that compliance agreement entails an agreement where the owner promises not to commit the offense again for a period of 1 year. If they do commit within that 1 year, then that ticket comes back and is due and payable to the city. For a 3-year comparison, I just want to emphasize that the 2024 is just to date. So it might look a little bit lower than the 2023, but it is trending higher. So as you can see, year over year, the file count has trended higher in all categories. And there could be a number of reasons for that. What we've noticed is our increase in file count and increase in calls. We've put out Good Neighbor guides, done more public education campaigns. And so more owners and residents are aware of our bylaws. That could be one of the reasons while the file counts are increasing. But yeah, that's the 3-year count, and we are trending at, again, between 15 to 20%. We are anticipating by the end of the year would be the growth. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Great, thank you. Very interesting. Are there any questions, Pat?
Is this PowerPoint available online?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay.
I have a two-part question. So the first part is, when we have big and busy occasions such as the Nagakirtan, have you noticed that the number of tickets issued has increased over the years, or is it steady?
Through the chair to Ms. Sadu. So we haven't noticed a trend in increase in tickets. We do try to do more public education in those circumstances. So for example, for Halloween and Diwali, which is also coming up, we do have officers that are educating prior to the events. Similar to the Nagar Kirtan, Canada Day, we have officers that educate prior to, but we do try to facilitate compliance rather than issuing tickets. But we do issue tickets when necessary.
And are those tickets mostly negotiated, or are they paid in full?
So those tickets, it depends if the offender disputes them, then they can be negotiated with the screening officer. But generally, we find that street and traffic tickets are the ones that get paid more than the property use ones.
Anyone else? Pat?
It would appear from previous information we had that you're rather short-staffed in terms of people that can be available, or I guess your complaint-driven process involves giving your name. And I know there are people in my neighborhood that don't want to report in case their name is given to their neighbor, because now we start an internal conflict and they are concerned about that.
Through the chair to Ms. Smith. Thank you for your question. So in regards to that, we do have the bylaw compliance policy that outlines how we triage calls. Yes, we do have complaints and are complaint driven mainly, but our officers, when they do see priority one calls out there, they will attend to those. So we don't ignore those. In regards to being complaint driven and not accepting anonymous calls, the compliance policy actually allows us to take in anonymous calls, but there is a process for that. We address it and see where it falls under the compliance policy. Then the staff have to consult with a manager to see if we will take that call in. The other thing to note is all our calls are kept confidential. So we do have the Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act that regulates the information that we share out to customers. So when customers do call us to put in a complaint, we emphasize and let them know that the information is kept confidential in a database that is locked down to the bylaw services team. So we would not release that information.
And it's never shared with
No,
the
it's
person
never
or complaint.
Okay, that wasn't the information that was given to one of the people that called in the neighborhood. They said you have to give your name, and that person said, well, I'm not comfortable giving my name. I don't want the people to know it was me that called. And it just fell from there. She hung up because she felt that her name would be shared with her neighbor.
And it wasn't explained to her that it wouldn't be?
Sorry,
And it wasn't explained to her that it wouldn't be shared?
no, it wasn't clearly explained to her that she understood. And maybe it was explained, but her thought was that person could find out who it was if they asked.
Yeah, and we'll take that feedback back to staff to make sure that they are emphasizing on that component of it. That information is not shared. It is kept confidential.
Well, that's good to know.
Anyone else?
And in the pie chart, what does the other category consist of?
So do you want to pull it back? So anything that doesn't fall under the top 5, so that could include our sound regulation bylaw, fireworks bylaw. So any bylaw that's not listed in those top 5 categories.
Thank you.
Just full of questions. Is there ever an incidence where either police or people that are from the city departments are working in the area where they will report things to you that they see?
Through the chair to Ms. Smith, yes, we do have our internal and external partners, and they will report issues with us. We do work closely with both our fire and police department on certain matters as well.
Okay, that's good to know too. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just for like firework during Halloween, like, would they be calling police?
Through the chair. So we actually are working closely with police, but the calls, if they come into us, we will attend. We do have 4 officers that are dedicated to working late evening on Halloween. And I am aware that Abbey PD is also having staff working late night that night, and we are working closely with them. So regardless of where the call comes, it will get addressed.
No one else? We're good? All right, thank you very much for your presentation, the information. All right, I guess then we just need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Gunnar, second by Van Brand, tag teaming it today. All in favor? No one opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you.